Separating law and politics. Challenges to the independence of judges and prosecutors in Egypt. It has been 3 years since Egypt became the second country to join the democratic Arab Spring movement. The January 2011 revolution was largely peaceful, but managed to topple a military regime that had survived 6 decades. After a transitional period presided over by the Supreme Command of the Armed Forces, on the 24th of June 2012, Mohamed Morsi became Egypt's first democratically elected president. His brief term was ended by the intervention of the army after widespread protests demanded his resignation on the 30th of June 2013. Today, Egypt's president is a judge. The head of Egypt's Supreme Constitutional Court, Adly Mansour. The nation's last 2 presidents are on trial, potentially facing the death penalty. Judges are an important force in any political transition, and during the past 3 years of extreme upheaval, Egypt's judiciary has found itself at the center of political life. Morsi's tenure was characterized by frequent verbal clashes with the judiciary, as well as a series of high-profile court decisions that polarized public opinion. These and other actions precipitated a new movement, the Tamarod, meaning rebellion in Arabic. Opposing camps dispute whether this was a military coup or a second revolution. Leading commentator, Professor Sherif Bassiouni, captured this confused and volatile situation in an International Bar Association interview.
The people said, okay, I can't go to the Constitutional Court. There is no parliament. I can't go through an impeachment process. I can't go through a recall process. I can't go through new elections. The only thing I can do is I can go to the street and say, here am I, count me here as a vote. And yes, it was a military coup. But it was a military coup which had some legitimacy to it.
In early autumn 2013, a renewed transitional government set out a roadmap for a renewed political transition process. An independent judiciary has a crucial role to play in any democratic society. It is one of the fundamental building blocks of a free state, helping to protect human rights. At a time when a country's political leaders are being replaced and its constitution and laws rewritten, judges can safeguard or undermine positive change.
The International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute organised a fact-finding mission to go to Cairo in June 2013. We were receiving reports of draft legislation that was being introduced during Morsi's regime that would have lowered the retirement age of judges from 70 to 60. This in itself would have forced about 3,000 judges into retirement. That's an issue which threatens the independence of the judiciary. We held over 25 meetings with over 40 individual stakeholders, including a cross range of the Egyptian judiciary from members of the Cairo Court of Appeal, representatives of the Supreme Judicial Council, and members of the Judges Club. Of course, everything changed on the 30th of June, and because the political situation shifted so dramatically, we decided to spend a period of time updating the findings and recommendations of our report with remote interviews.
The Egyptian Ministry of Justice, and in particular the Minister of Justice himself, currently possesses wide-ranging powers in law and in practice.
In a free society, you don't want the government to be able to exercise an influence over judges or to have a role to play in the disposition of individual cases. So when we went to Egypt and when we reviewed Egyptian laws, the question was, is there scope for the executive branch to play this kind of role? When we spoke to lawyers, they gave us some examples of cases where there was a controversial ruling and the judge was moved. And while during the mission we couldn't verify these particular anecdotes, we did find that on a review of the laws, there are issues that could be improved.
The influence of executive power, a lack of transparency, a perception of nepotism, and an underrepresentation of women in the judiciary, as well as a prosecutorial trend which suggests the active pursuance of members of a regime's political opposition, have also constituted threats to independence.
there have been 3 distinct trends in the prosecutions that we've seen under each administration that has come in since Mubarak left power in 2011. So you had a first stage with the military rule, where there was a huge spike in the number of prosecutions for the crime of insulting the military. You had a second phase under President Morsi, where there was an upsurge in the number of prosecutions for crimes like insulting the president and insulting Islam. And since Morsi was removed, that's since July 2013, there's been a huge number of prosecutions against Muslim Brotherhood figures and Muslim Brotherhood supporters. While you've seen these trends under each administration, at the same time you have a relative lack of accountability for when it comes to crimes allegedly committed by the police or the army, and this of course leads to the accusation that the judicial system at the moment in Egypt is guilty of selective justice.
Ending the involvement of the Ministry of Justice in the assignment of judges, creating a body independent of the executive responsible for disciplining judges, adopting measures to remove any other influence by the Minister of Justice over judicial work, with international assistance, adopting a series of published guidelines governing the use of prosecutorial discretion to initiate cases, establishing a transitional justice process, including a fact-finding commission, ideally with international involvement.
There have been enormous challenges, and they'll continue to be, but Egypt is turning a corner in 2014, and the new constitution, I think, provides a solid basis for this fresh start. We hope to see both judges and prosecutors playing a positive role in this new Egypt, where the state can both account for violations of the past, but also better protect the rights of all citizens going forward.